I guess I don't dream, so that taught me. So these are all poems from my new manuscripts. Suddenly vectors shift. To look up there, a sky seems no reason of God, and here in what's mostly me, it's dumb in my soul. I hear nothing. Even when hard of cash, I never say please, thanks, amen. And when misery falls on me, I don't lean on a lord, that king, but curse bankers, curse this or that girl. I never sound, oh Christ, oh child, whither should I go? But this one day the poem went up. Stacy was dead, and God seemed a little word for that. Kaddish. For God, there is nothing more important than sound. To sit soundless in his house is to have lived all down, all along. Poets belong to the tempo of that house. Stacy and Uncle Mike play there. And sometimes on the sea there's room to speak, and I pretend to hear all three of them. Hashtag unoccupied. After everyone stops smoking the Ovid, it gets ugly to be alive. The dead refuse us, and instead someone I know turns over a police car and nothing happens anymore, not even my face, so empty and too full of other people's meanings. I was bored and you were bored, remember? We dreamed of leaving our heads without a single noun in them. A crawl space is not a foundation. The entrance of a new old couch might change the feelings in the house. You've fallen into a dark pool. Me, I'm a dumb spouse, a quiet fool, taken once by a rat, twice nightly by mice. Wood roaches, grasshoppers creep in the door. The dog won't ignore such presences, will piss next to his bowl. I, for the feeling of control, will kill with bare hands smaller things. A storm leaks in to rot the sill. I'll not think to eat breakfast. Coffee is too much. Is that love that's not enough? Screwdriver.
I know.
The future is only death abstracted. Most of the day I feel things. Nobody pays me. I just do it. Water dripping on the steel bowl rings out, and I and the dog on the couch have no God. We have poetry, which Jack gladly gives up for a bowl of beef. Not doing is a way of attaching to yourself again. To be lazy enough to have thoughts creates no surplus value. I don't have to be anywhere in the morning, and we'll see the sunrise. We'll read or not read. Tonight I opened Taggart, the book of John, where it is written, your soul is known by its dissatisfaction. The rain is how we live in it. I am life, breathing is life. Don't forget the loose green twitch of plants. Plants destroy flesh. Stand here long enough and the vines choke you. Who's there? Speak. Fred says life escapes. I am life, and what can't fall in line comes out sideways. This is political theory. Pencils would lay bricks. Money doesn't change matter, only rearranges matters. Words matter, only betray forms of thinking, wishful thinking. Maybe I wish matters would change words from thought forms to hard nickel matter. Or maybe I wish words could change matters, not just think about how wrongly love and money move through this world. If words could push back against this world which presses down so hard on our little words, poetry would be another matter, not as another form of matter, not any kind of money, but poetry would be our own thoughts, real and pressing, like the hand of our dreams, rearranging matters, the things that matter as worlds, not words. Poetry would let us call our world into being, could make things, not just disclose them, and I could finally stop saying every time I looked at this world, we could have imagined anything, and this is all we came up with. I could stop reading Lukács and say, in the beginning there was the word, and it would mean something. Clarification. When I say we, I mean the dog and me, not we the people or we my girl and me. We is my dog and me. flip it after I leave. Sometimes you're just glad you're happening. It makes no sense. The sky is falling and they trademarked the sun. Still, I feel it on my face and like it. I know it's stupid. Your cart is empty. Skinny boys were made for clothes in which others feel mostly terrible. Even when naked, God is a word for the bell we ring. For liberty makes a sound to say there's plenty of corn syrup in the cotton candy, but just for me. That one was funny, Mom.
Read it again.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you're just going to humor me.
You're going to humor us.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm lucky. Your cart is empty. Skinny boys were made for clothes in which others feel mostly terrible. Even when naked, God is a word for the bell we ring. For liberty makes a sound to say there's plenty of corn syrup in the cotton candy, but just for me.
Yeah!
I went over great in Colorado.
Hippies.
They were all a bunch of high hippies. It's the transition from God to liberty that's difficult. Final Valentine. I felt sure that together you and I might be an example of something beautiful, and on a spring day that was really only mid-February, we celebrated ourselves too soon. I walked into a barn and let the baby goats suck my fingers until they bled. It's instinct to cry when the skin breaks. You stared with the other agricultural tourists who had also assented to the liability clause. If the chickens knew anything, they didn't say. A cow named Blackie followed the children like a dog. Later, they ate him. How I made my mother gasp. And in the violence and fever of being a creature of thumbs, I thought suddenly to gasp instead of grasp. I thought to gasp in form could change me from a creature of digits to one of breath. This thought made my mother gasp, and though I had a sense that life, even for a creature of grasp, was still mostly in the gasp, what I didn't know was that to be a creature of gasp was to sense the violence and the fever of being a creature of grasp and to gasp about it. Distressed property. Poetry, let's divide the shares. Let's cut my face in two. One part for you, one part for the hard money. Evenings I, after 5, can sing without a care at underthemoneytree.com. There my face can't split. I'm always where no one listens. So I'm going to end with an essay from my dissertation. Essay with dead fish. I'm wondering if a writer isn't, it's not really for women, just kidding. It's a joke for Bonnie. I'm wondering if a writer isn't a kind of failed magician, or if it's an erroneous gesture for a reader or a writer to apply the kind of thinking required in the space of the book to a space outside of the book. What I mean is, a reader or a writer is praised for the correspondences she can make between things in the space of a book. The more unexpected relationships or links I can make between different ideas or objects in my book, the smarter I'll appear as a writer. The same goes for a reader. The person who can point out the most relationships between things, who can make the most meanings, is the best student. And maybe this is true in the game of reading. A magician, if I remember my Spicer correctly, is a person who does this in the world of real life. A magician creates correspondences between things that another person wouldn't necessarily see, and that's where the magic comes from. But I'm beginning to think that for a person to read the world in the same way that she reads a text is a kind of false or failed magic, if only because the world is not a sealed system the way a book is. A book is a limited set, whereas the world is infinite. We don't get the whole story when we are outside of a book, but the practice of reading books, especially if we are good at it, might make us confident enough to read the real this way. I think it gives us a false sense of control because the world is too big. Too many things remain outside our ken. So to create a narrative based on certain coincidences of experiences, to read life the way we read a book, seems to me, at least right now, emotionally dangerous. We can ascribe people and places too much significance. Maybe I'm just feeling a victim of my own magic because the book I wrote before this book, the book I wrote before the one you are reading now, used so much of me as material for itself. The life of my early 20s is the furniture of that book, though most of the things that happen in that book never happened in real life. But inside the book, even though the things inside it never happened, the text inside the book started echoing so many parts of itself without me seeing it until it was all written and done. And so the book seemed so much smarter than I, who had written it. This made me think the book was filled with a special kind of magic. Everything corresponded in the book, and so I began to believe the book could reach out beyond its pages and make meanings outside of itself. I thought the book could make meanings in my life. A concrete example might help, especially since I am talking about a real problem, or at least I think I am talking about a real problem. I mean, I really had been stupid enough to think that the magic I had felt in the book was now making things, magical things, happen between me and a girl who I met here outside of the book. And I like to think that the girl too, even if only for a few minutes, I like to think that she too had thought for a moment there was a kind of magic between the two of us, if only because she had been caught by the book's magic too, though she had only read the book, but I had written it. Of course, the magic wouldn't have worked if I hadn't written the book and she hadn't read it. I mean, she read the book and saw that I, or the character who might have been me, if it had been at all possible for the real me to make it into the book, this girl saw that I walked past her house in the book. And that fact, I think, seemed like a special kind of magic to us, a magic that meant something outside the book. We thought it was magic because inside the book I walked towards the river past the Portuguese bakery, and if one is in Providence and walking towards the river past the Portuguese bakery, one would have to walk past this girl's house. So when she told me in real life that I walked right past her house in the book, I could tell that both she and I thought that because I walked right past her house in the book, that we both thought, at least for a moment, I should be walking not past, but into her house in real life. But the problem with both of us thinking this about the book and how the book was making meanings in real life was that when I had lived in Providence, there had been another Portuguese bakery on another corner that a person could also walk past in order to get to the river. But neither of us knew that at the time, though I think that the girl started to suspect something was wrong before I did. And I don't think that the girl was smarter than I was, but maybe I was lonelier than she, and so sometimes I bent the magic inside the book to point at things outside the book to make them look as though I shouldn't be lonely and I should be together with this particular girl. For instance, one of the things I bent towards the girl outside the book had to do with the name inside the book. I had forgotten that one of the characters had the same name as this girl, and I had only noticed the name again on the page once the book arrived on my doorstep from the publisher. And even though this name in the book was never meant to point to this particular girl outside the book, but was the name of someone who had once lived down the hall from me in real life many years ago, I still tried to force a kind of magic into this fact. I wanted to think that the book had always known that I would meet this girl, and so my life was now going to change. And I wanted to believe this because the character in the book with the same name as the girl in real life speaks to me in a scene where we get drunk and I say, "This river was made for us," and she says, I know. And at the time, I really wanted a place in the world for me, and a girl in the river seemed just such a place, though I think I want all of that much less now. And I see now how wrong I was to think this way about the book and the girl. I was wrong to think about it this way because already the Portuguese bakery inside the book was different than the Portuguese bakery in real life. So it's possible that the river I walk to in the book is different than the river I walk to from the girl's house. You have to keep these things in mind after you write a book and then meet a girl. What I mean is that after writing the book, I began to believe there was the same kind of magic everywhere outside the book, and this kind of thinking I know now is wrong. For me to know this, though, life had to correct my thinking and show me that meanings in life were different than the meanings in books. And the way that life did this was to take me to the river with this girl. I arrived in Providence one day and tried to make things magical between us, and so I tried to go to the river with the girl. And it was as though life said, please, by all means, walk to the river with this girl, but I am afraid you will find no magic there. And it was only because I went to the river with this girl that afternoon that I began to see there were perhaps moments when feelings coincided between people outside of books, but there was probably no magic between people in real life the way there's magic between words and books. I began to think this because when the girl and I arrived at the river, we began to smell something terrible. Along the river, we began to smell something like horse stables and fish markets, and as we walked further down the path along the river, we found ourselves ankle-deep in mud, and in the mud there were hundreds of dead fish, dead silver fish in the mud, and that's when I saw that I was wrong about magic. Life had put the dead fish under my feet so that I would finally understand that I was not meant to go to the river with the girl in real life, even though there was a kind of magic in my book. That's when I started to think that those things that happen outside of books aren't meant to be as magical as the things that happen to us inside of books. And I thought that maybe to try to make meanings in your life the way you would in a book is just the tick of a reader. And I thought maybe reading only works in books. Thank you.